Welcome everyone to the FilmBusters pod interview with Michael Martin, star of Broken Nose, Empty Pockets, one of the hits of the London Film Festival. As many of you will know, I caught it a couple of weeks ago and was absolutely bowled over by it. Michael, thank you for joining us today, man. I really appreciate it.
It's a real pleasure, and it's a real pleasure to be able to correct a brain fart of yours, just like right off the top.
Go on, do it.
The movie is Bloody Nose, Empty Pockets.
I knew it was as well. See, there was always going to be one.
Empty Pockets. So you just better be leaving that in your YouTube video.
I told you we were rugged at FilmBusters. We're a little rough around the edges, so we keep that in.
It's fine. It's fine. And thank you for having me. Thank you for asking me.
Pleasure is all ours. Michael, just off the top, there was a full big rush of films that we had for the London Film Festival. I don't know if you know, but the whole thing went digital this year because of everything that's going on with COVID. So we had,
If I could jump in right there. I wanted to tell you, I mean, I only followed it as closely as, you know, your average American is probably going to follow things that happen in the UK, especially lately. But I was bloody, I was bloody impressed. Bloody Nose, Empty Pockets had plainly faded a lot from public consciousness in the last month or 2 months, whatever. I track it closely. And the London Film Festival just revived interest in the movie like nothing has since the Sundance premiere early this year. You guys, you guys have a lot of clout. Because all of a sudden, all over the place again, and it hadn't been for a long time. So sorry to interrupt your introduction, but I need to pay attention to the London Film Festival from now on.
Well, I mean, with films like this, you've got to, because there's always gems. I mean, we have to be honest. Like when the lineup got announced, there was a lot of unknown films on there for the most part. So it was like completely going in blind. And when I checked this out, I had no idea what it was about, apart from a 1 or 2 sentence synopsis, which I think it's something like, you know, something like a motley crew of strangers convene in a bar on closing night, something like that, right? And I thought, okay, that's a bit of me. And then as I was watching it, it took about 20, 25 minutes before I thought, God, these actors are playing this superbly. Like they are completely playing how people would react in this situation, how people are when they've had a drink, impeccably. And then I thought, hang on a minute, is this a documentary? So about halfway through, I was like, okay, it's a documentary. But then by the end, I thought, this is not. This is a work of fiction, but it's also a documentary. Michael, please, can you clarify for us how would you describe the film?
I need to emphasize, not just at this point, but every subsequent point, that I only speak for myself and I don't speak for the Ross brothers, okay? It was apparently a decision by the Sundance directors. I don't know how that process happens. It was apparently a decision by the Sundance directors to place Bloody Nose, Empty Pockets in the documentary category after some long conversation about that very question. And that's in part due to the Ross brothers' track record with devised documentaries. So those debates have followed the movie from day one.
Right.
As it's worked its way further into the culture, it has come to be discussed more, talked about more as less of a documentary that borrows some fictional techniques and more like a work of fiction that borrows some documentary techniques.
Right.
And I think the latter is closer to true.
Okay.
I don't know that the Ross brothers would agree, which is why I said that at the top. I do think it is principally a work of creation that borrows a lot of documentary techniques. Having said that, really only, I'm going to say, two of my moments in the film were thought through in advance, or even like, okay, we're going to give this a try sometime during the course of the evening.
Right.
Everything else I'm doing in that movie is responding to whatever is going on internally or externally amongst the rest of the cast, without my having decided, okay, now I'm going to move my attitude to the left.
Right.
So
right.
it's not. It is 90 whatever % of it legitimately in the moment.
Right.
And if that is all it takes to consider it a documentary, then a documentary it is.
Well, I mean, how do you judge what a documentary is? You've got documentarians like Werner Herzog, who could arguably be said to be creating fiction from the minute the camera rolls to the minute it ends. Why what you include and what you choose not to include dictates it. So, Michael, maybe if I tell you what my understanding of the production was, you can correct me if I'm wrong. So my understanding, rightly or wrongly, was that everyone that we saw in the bar, apart from yourself, was essentially being themselves, were characters that...
I would include myself in essentially being myself as well.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So
that what I'm doing on film is not at all far from who I am in reality.
Right.
There is, I'm sorry, I keep cutting off your questions.
No, not at all. Keep going. They want to hear you speak. They don't want to hear me speak.
There is a postscript to the DVD release of the movie. Actually, I think it's available in the streaming release as well. There's a bonus feature in the release of the movie where the Rosses gather me and a couple of the other cast members together for a celebratory Zoom drink.
Right.
And I make a point then, and I think I'm sticking with it. I make a point in that little bit of saying that the two things that differentiate me from the version of myself that I've offered the movie is that that Michael is alone in the world. I'm not. He really is at the end of his rope and the end of his life, and I'm not quite there yet.
I'm glad to hear this.
Yes, and I think more importantly that he's given up on believing in the power or effectiveness or purpose of his talent. He doesn't think he has anything more to contribute.
Yeah.
And I am still hanging on to that notion.
Yeah.
But other than that, no. That is how I would react to a night in a bar. That is how I would react to the people I was with. I'm just a little bit more. I'm just a little bit more lost and disconnected than I am in my day-to-day.
Right. I mean, it smacks of authenticity, so that doesn't surprise me at all. I thought, considering that from what I had read, that largely it was performance from you, I did think if that is performance, this is one of the greatest character actors of all time, because it strikes me as so sincere. So it plays out to make a lot more sense based on what you're saying. So perhaps then you could tell me about how the directors approached you to appear in this film. Like, what was the pitch that got your interest?
My day job is as a janitor, a custodian. I had both a regular day job at I think a major local bar. I loved working for them very much. I don't any longer. And then I have private clients, households, and one-off jobs as well. The Rosses, I forget which of them did this, which is embarrassing. One of the two brothers had seen me in a local production of Long Day's Journey into Night by O'Neill, and which was an automatic compliment because it is obviously is a major role for me. It's O'Neill. So they had seen that, and they had specific thematics that they needed somebody with acting experience to carry, or wanted somebody with acting experience to carry. But they also wanted to remain true to their aesthetic, and they did not insist on it. Okay. There was an O'Neill-esque speech that they emailed me, which they hoped that I would put into my own words and deliver at some point late in the shoot. I utterly failed to do that because of exhaustion and just the day going another direction. That O'Neill tribute never came out of my mouth.
Right.
They took specific inspiration from Michael Jeter's performance in Grand Hotel and sent me links to that. I did not find that inspiring either and did not use it.
Right.
Which I think I'd never told them until after the movie came out. But since the two explicit things that they were asking of me were things that I turned away from, one deliberately, one not, since the specific things they were asking of me were things that I turned away from, I did at least want to honor their overall intent, which was not to fake up a lot. Right. So if I wasn't going to use their preparation, I wasn't really going to make any of my own either.
Right.
And the most I did in order to be ready for the shoot on the day that it happened was to put together a small a shaving kit, essentially, of things that I thought a homeless man would keep within reach.
Yeah.
But that was the extent of my preparation. Otherwise, I was just coming as is.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. The part that gets dicey is that I knew I have done, we'll call it reality shooting, if not documentary shooting. I've done reality shooting before in much smaller and less ambitious projects. I like it if I know what I'm walking into, but I have done shooting with creative people who don't trust acting per se.
Okay.
Who want to put the people under camera, under duress, and film their legitimate, automatic, in the moment responses.
Yeah.
And I don't mind it. I like it. It's difficult, but obviously, given the amount of alcohol expected in this particular shoot, and particularly the amount of time that I was expected to be there, I was literally the only on-camera person who was there for the entire 18 or 19 hours.
That's right. You're the constant throughout the film.
I am the constant, and I was there the entire damn day.
Wow. How many days shooting was it? Was it just the one day, or did you do that over
18 hours nonstop?
Wow.
18 hours nonstop. Plus, a little bit of prep and, arrival and departure time, but 18 hours nonstop.
And it was in the moment from the beginning to the end. So everything we see genuinely was. It was drinking.
I mean, we could step away. We could step away. There were more than one time where I just had to get out of the room
Yeah.
and go back into the back alley where the fried chicken was assembled and the technical support
Perfect.
people were assembled, and just get out of reach of the camera for a
Right.
break.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's everything that's happening in the bar is happening in the bar. I understand that they did some more setups with the less camera experienced people.
Yeah.
I believe the fellow's speech, I'm sure the fellow's speech who delivers kind of a grandiose, and I don't mean that as an insult, I think it's funny. The guy who kind of delivers a grandiose farewell to the bar
Right.
was asked
Okay.
to prepare that in advance.
Right.
Um,
Right.
I think that some of the relationships were asked to, please pay particular attention to this person or that person.
Right.
Were asked in advance. Ricky Red singing was definitely requested in advance.
Oh,
It's not
okay.
a decision she made in the moment.
Right.
Um, um, but they pretty much left me alone. I told you about the two that they did come to me about. I
Yeah.
told you the two I didn't deliver on either of them.
Okay.
I offered one of my own in turn, which was the encounter with the scene between Pete and I was planned, and not the content of it again, but the fact of it
Right.
was planned in advance. I approached him early in the day and said, I tell this story too often, but it is what it is, and goes to what kind of man he was. He's passed away.
Oh, really? I didn't realize.
Just within the last few weeks. It's very new.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. God.
Yeah, I
He was a
went to
young
his
guy.
one of his memorial services about 3 weeks ago in Asheville.
Jesus.
He was very dear to very many people. There were memorial services to Pete in like 4 different cities.
Right.
Um,
Right.
anyway, I knew that I wanted some kind of please get out of this place scene with somebody younger than me late in the evening.
Yeah.
But I did not arrive knowing who else was going to be available. Pete was available, and I knew him casually.
Right.
We became close thereafter. I said to him in the early going, do you mind if I make a pass at you in a couple of hours?
Yeah.
And he said, no, sounds like fun.
Yeah.
So that was as much of prep as that was.
Right.
I knew I was going to try to talk him into getting out of the bar life. He knew he had to, rouse me out of having passed out
Yeah.
too early in the evening, but the rest of it was him and me playing it as it unfolded.
I mean, it's incredible to hear you say that, because it's testament to the entire film, then, all of you guys, that you can't decipher which are perhaps the more planted moments and which are just completely genuine. The entire flow, ebb and flow of the piece feels like it is just happening organically without any, there's no contrivance involved in getting to any of those pieces.
One of the smartest things that I have read on Twitter, which was intended as an insult, I'm pretty sure, but nevertheless, was some commenter who I'd seen and I think liked the movie. He's not somebody I ended up following.
Okay.
Said, well, yeah, if everybody's drunk, you've automatically got a documentary. And honestly, that is, when you come down to it, whatever the balance is of fiction and nonfiction, and just being oneself in the moment and planning to be a version of oneself in advance.
Yeah.
You fill everybody up with booze, you've got a documentary.
Yeah.
What I would add to that is that excuse me just a second. The Rossborough, I know they chose here primarily. I mean, I don't know. I think that they chose here primarily because their home base is here, and
Right.
this is this town that they feel most comfortable in and understand the best.
Okay.
But I do also believe that they chose, if it was part of their deliberate intention, I do believe they chose New Orleans smartly in that the particular kind of crazy here, every city has its crazy. Nashville is one of the most, at least when I was there, which was now decades ago.
Yeah.
Nashville was one of the most buttfuck crazy cities I've ever been in. DC has a good heap and handful of characters.
Right.
What makes the New Orleans crazy, unique to New Orleans, is the peculiar, to my experience, the peculiar performativeness of
everyone who's there, everyone who inhabits
of
it.
everybody who's there here. One of, I mean, I've lived here since 2002, so I'm not new here. I'm not a native, but I'm not new.
No,
And I still am struck by everybody's willingness, well-born or low-born. I am still struck by everybody's willingness to put on a show of themselves within 5 minutes of meeting them. It's practically a way of saying hello.
Yeah.
And I can speculate about why that is, but whyever it is, it is. And if you want to do a film with a whole mess of people whom you can count on to be demonstrative versions of themselves, hire a room full of New Orleanians, because they will.
Fantastic. That's fantastic.
They will deliver versions of themselves, and it won't even be artificial, because that's just what they do.
Yeah, interesting. That's really interesting. That goes totally hand in hand with the ethos of the film, really, right?
Yeah, very much so.
Because you were so immersed in it for that entire day, I guess, I mean, it may be a no-brainer. Drinking for that prolonged period of time.
That was... Go ahead. I'm going to let you finish your question
for
one.
My main question was, when you first saw the film back for the first time, were there any moments that you were like, I can't even remember that happening?
I'm a little bit embarrassed to say. This is going to be another one of those long-winded two-part answers.
We love those already.
To answer your question simply, I have, probably embarrassingly, but I have only seen the film once, and then not in its entirety. There was a private screening here in New Orleans, basically for me, because they knew that there were aspects of my participation that I was being publicly unhappy about. Right. And they wanted to, mollify me and show me what they had done. I say that as a compliment. They could have easily given me a big fuck you, we've got our film. But they didn't. They arranged a private screening for me. And a number of other people involved in the film came, and I could bring guests, but I know that it existed because I was bitching, and it existed at a time when they were really fucking busy. You know, they had a lot of shit going on,
right,
to be arranging a screening for the sake of my happiness. So that's the one time I've seen it. And I had to step out of the room multiple times. And so there are passages in that movie I have yet to see it uninterruptedly
Right.
from top to bottom.
You didn't step out of the room because of what you were seeing?
I stepped out of the room because I am aware that, I mean, you can't not be. I am aware of how decayed I am.
Right.
And portions of it were difficult to watch. And
Okay.
that's taking nothing away from the film. That's
Okay.
really, I mean, I knew why they were hiring what they were hiring.
Right.
And there are very few, as again another critic said, nobody looks healthy. Nobody looks healthy. Nobody looks well. There's a buttload of smoking going on, and it's hard to watch myself.
That makes sense. I can completely understand that. Right.
Yeah.
Completely understand
So the only moment that I do not that appeared on screen that I do not remember doing was actually fairly early in the day.
All right.
And I remembered it after the fact, but I wouldn't have remembered it had they not chosen to include it. The Celine Dion singing,
Okay.
the Celine Dion singing in the mirror was an impulse of the moment that I forgot about.
Okay.
The film is also just bloody 4 years old.
Yeah.
They shot it in 2016.
Yeah. And so much went on to happen throughout the course of that day. It's hardly surprising.
Yeah. No, the only moment I watched and went, I forgot I did that was probably that moment.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, the rest of which is nice, or because it's one of the more commented on passages in the movie. It's more commented on in terms of its filmic artistry than it is me, but it's still often commented on. The shot in the mirror.
Yeah.
They're very good. They're very good with, I mean, they're just purely, simply very good with the camera and with light. I mean, they had 18 hours of footage that they had to fucking go through.
Yeah.
To whittle it down to a 90-minute movie that would flow. The broader question is that I'll dispose of this quickly. Because this is where I walk along a dicey line. I was not willing to do as much unrestrained drinking as they wanted people to do.
Okay.
I have a family history with alcoholism.
Right.
I have a family history with alcoholism. I knew the potential to embarrass myself on camera was going to go through the roof after hour 6 or hour 8.
Yeah, and even sooner for most people, right?
Yeah, and I just paced myself really, really carefully because the risk was inherent enough without me going 3 sheets.
Would I be right in saying that maybe playing into that a little bit was a certain weight of responsibility on your shoulders because, as we've established, you are the one constant throughout? You didn't really want to be half cut halfway through the film when you're essentially steering.
I would love to give myself that credit, and a couple of critics have done so. There's one guy writing out Michael, answer the question. I would love to give myself that credit, but no, it was just me being self-protective.
Okay, all right.
It was if I were a younger, if I were a younger, handsomer, less emotionally fraught man, yes, I would have been happy to show up in the bar and just drink until I fell over sideways. But I'm none of those things. And so I needed, for the sake of my own self-respect, to keep the alcohol consumption to a manageable level.
Okay.
Having said that, a number of critics who don't seem to be stupid people, and I've had at least one other cast member reiterate this, said that I was an, an anchor person, or set the tone, or made. If that is the case, it wasn't something I set out to do. It may be something I simply do as a matter of course or instinct. But if somehow I was, the most recent way to describe it was the control for the experiment. If for by some virtue of an actor's temperament, I was the control for the experiment around which the rest of the people assembled played, then great. But it's not something.
It wasn't intentional.
It wasn't intentional. No, that is giving myself way too much credit.
Well, I mean, it certainly works from a spectator's point of view, because it feels like, you know, you are the oil in the engine. You are the comforter, if there can be comfort found in the bar, because as all of these characters come and go throughout, you are there, and there is that familiarity. I think anyone who has frequented a bar more than once and gets that sense of community and solidarity that you have sometimes, one of the most comforting things is seeing someone, although there is a tragic side to it, as you've touched on. It's comforting for others to know that there is that person. So it perhaps works with the cast. It certainly works from an audience point of view. I wondered, because of that. Sorry, go ahead.
No, this is brief. I would like to have felt secure enough. I would like to have felt emotionally secure enough to simply relax and enjoy myself that day.
But it wasn't really possible. Okay.
It wasn't really possible.
That does lead on to my next question, which was, if throughout the entirety of filming, what were the particular interactions or human emotions that you wish you could have plumbed even deeper, based on what, you know, interactions with certain characters? Yeah.
I think that I would like to have. I think that I would like to have completed. They certainly got started, but then, as conversations in bars do, they went off in other directions, and other things took over. I think that I would have liked to have completed more of the intergenerational thematics, the intergenerational conversations that start and don't finish a couple of different times. One of the smartest things that the Ross brothers did, and this again, I have not asked, I'm sure this is not accidental, is that the day began with the day drinkers were primarily people who probably should have been at least in outpatient treatment somewhere.
Right.
And as the evening progresses, those characters by and large get worked out, and a more recognizable to most people crowd of after work drinkers starts moving in.
Yeah.
There is a flow, again, with me present throughout. There is a flow to who dominates the room, as the day proceeds or the night proceeds.
Yeah.
And there are a couple of opportunities. This is just speaking personally. It has nothing to do with the film. I expected the millennial generation in this country to seize the political wheel this election cycle.
Right.
I by and large looked forward to it. I thought it was time that my generation passed on the control of the national conversation.
Sure.
They didn't. I want to say that without any sort of judgment. You got a lot of different theories, some of them hostile. You've got a lot of different theories about why the generation, which is now in its 30s and brushing its 40s. I mean, they're not kids.
No.
You've got different theories about why the millennial generation failed to seize control of the political process, and we now have Joe Biden running against the murderer in chief. Yeah. And my generation is going to have one hopefully last turn in the driver's seat before everything falls apart. But I expected it to happen. I hoped it would happen. I knew I wasn't going to be comfortable with all of it, but it was really time, and it didn't happen.
No.
This movie was shot in 2016, on the eve of the election.
Was it on the eve of the election?
Yeah, it literally was.
Wow.
Yeah, it literally was. Or maybe a day or two before.
Yeah.
Maybe a day or two before. And
right.
I would have, it was 4 years between that level of decay and this level of decay. I would like to have completed more of those barroom arguments.
Yeah.
I would have liked to have completed more of those barroom arguments, and they didn't really get more than caromed off of, like so many things during the course of the movie got caromed off of.
I guess again, it works well for the viewer because it's like in a bar, as you're floating from table to table and group to group, you're getting a sense of the conversations, a sense of the discussions and the arguments that are taking place. But very rarely are you there for the beginning or the end of them. You join them and then you leave early, and that tends to be the case. And that's kind of what helped push this along. Just coming to a theme overall of the film, which felt, because it's quite easy to forget that essentially this is taking place on the last night the bar is open for business. So there is a lot of sadness at the heart of the story because this great communal space is shutting down, and it feels so timely that here we are 4 years after you filmed that communal spaces, I don't know about the US, but in the UK, communal spaces are shutting down every single day because they just can't keep the lights on.
You can't hold. No, it's actually, again, I only follow your politics in broad strokes, but
that's the best way
to
do
follow them. But it's worse here because the support, the federal support is so much poorer. I can't stay there. The working class got a single payment 8 months ago of $1,200 and have gotten nothing since. So there's no ongoing support. There's no ongoing support. And even if and that includes small businesses. New Orleans has lost at least a dozen places that I know of that are irreplaceable, and it's a small town. The New Orleans has lost at least a dozen places that simply won't be back because the ownership couldn't carry on any longer. Back to your question. I'm sorry.
Well, that's it. It's where do people go now to find that sense of community? The answer isn't immediately apparent, but what is it? What's going to replace these places for people? Business-wise, it's a tragedy. For the working man and woman, it's a tragedy, of course. But for the people who find solace in those places, what do they have? Where can they turn to now?
On that particular aspect of what I refer to as, again, no idea what will happen for you.
Yeah.
On that particular aspect of what I refer to as the American Armageddon, I'm peculiarly optimistic.
Good.
Yeah, I do believe, and again, this might be particular to being in New Orleans. I might feel differently if I lived in a New York or a Los Angeles or a more financially resourceful Chicago. Actually, most of my time that hasn't been here has been in Chicago.
Right.
I might feel differently if I lived in a more financially resourceful, structurally sturdier town than this one is. But I do believe if we get through it at all, that those places, if they don't survive, they will return in a new form under new ownership, because places like that insist on themselves.
Yeah.
Places like the Roaring Twenties insist on themselves. And the people who seek those places out insist on having them. So I don't think it's going away. I think the ones that are, I think many of the ones that are long loved and long treasured are going or gone, but there will be something else. Again, assuming overall survival, there will be something else, because those people have to have a place to go.
Yeah.
And if one doesn't exist, they will make
one. Yeah. That's surprisingly uplifting response to a question that seems like it's just a pit of despair. So I'm glad that you're able to offer some light there, because it's hard to find it nowadays, but that's some optimism. Michael, I got a couple last questions for you, if that's okay. You've already given me so much of your time. I've appreciated it. It's been fascinating talking to you. I just wanted to speak about one scene in particular towards the end of the movie, where everyone vacates the bar to see these fireworks being set off, but you. And I wondered, without going into the direction perhaps behind that, what was going on for Michael the actor and Michael the character in that scene? Why did you choose to remain?
On this one, I'm going to have to beg 4 years ago. And I don't remember what was going through my mind.
Okay, that's good. It keeps it more mysterious, that scene as well, then.
But if I haven't made it clear by, because obviously that was another of the prearranged scenes. The Rosses had the fireworks. It was a scene that they wanted.
So it was a choice by them to hold you back at the bar and not to go out?
No. The existence of the fireworks, in the parking lot was their choice. My staying behind was mine.
Interesting.
And I don't remember what was going through my mind or why I chose to do that, but I can guess because I've been living with myself for a while. My guess is that I simply don't like fireworks very much. So just as you know, it's not something I find entertaining, and that kind of whoop-de-doo, that kind of whoop-de-doo scene, everybody, you know, everybody let loose kind of scene is exactly what I'm not good at and not likely to enjoy.
Yeah.
So simply as what it is that, okay, now we're doing this is not, you know, I'm sorry, I'll stay back in the lodge. If you're all going skiing, I'll stay back in the lodge. It's that kind of response.
I mean, I loved it because it appealed to the introvert in me, and it appeals to the introvert in everyone, right? There's always a moment when you feel like spoiling the fun.
Yeah.
And you do it by just being yourself.
On an art, if I haven't said it by implication, which I think I have, I will say it explicitly. I think that actually this is where some of the power, perhaps most of the power of a performance comes from. I was, at the same time that I was determined to do the best possible job under the parameters of the project that I could do, I was also pretty unhappy that I had agreed to do it.
Right.
It's a very weird combination. I wish it were weird, actually. It's probably not. It's a very unfortunate combination of self, I think the word is abnegation. It's a very unfortunate combination of self-abnegation and grandiosity. I hate what I'm doing here, but I'm going to do the best job of it I can anyway. If I'm, and I don't remember it, but if I'm guessing, well, because I did watch that scene when I saw it in preview. If I'm guessing at what was going on in my mind at that point, it was nothing more complicated than I hate being here. I hate being here, and I think that's why I was crying.
I mean, it's amazingly powerful. Like I say, it appealed to me on a very primitive base level of who I am inherently. But I think even for those who feel extroverted, even for those who would run outside for the whoop-de-doo of the fireworks, that kind of person can relate to that moment. And just like with the entire film, it rang true and it was completely sincere and honest. So it felt.
I want to emphasize that even if my reason for staying behind was as bleak as that, and then again, kudos to them, I did not know I was on camera. Right. I thought the cameras were all outside.
Yeah.
I thought the shoot had moved outside, and I thought the shoot had moved outside, and that I was taking a self-pitying break from the main action. So if they got that on camera, a security camera, that was their resourcefulness. That was not me presenting them a moment.
How do you feel about the fact that it is caught because there's a certain level of pretension maybe that says you have to suffer a little for great art? I don't know whether you believe that, but it feels like there is almost a bit of suffering. And I guess in order for that scene to play out, the one who suffered was you, if not in the moment, but seeing it later. Is that a kind of compromise that is always going to permeate the work?
The only thing I have to disagree with is the word always. I No. Usually, there there is no question, given my resume and my temperament and the nature of the roles that I'm drawn to doing. There is no question that I create primarily from unhappiness.
Hmm.
And if I was unhappy in this shoot, then I was a better actor. That is usually my wellspring.
Right.
But I'm happy to say it's not an absolutely essential requirement.
Necessity. Good.
There was another local theatrical production which closed just weeks actually before the pandemic got rolling full steam. There was a local production of the comedy Noises Off by Michael Frayn.
Yeah.
Which, I played Selsden, the elderly burglar who's tippling constantly and doesn't really know his lines or his entrances. And it was far and away the happiest production I've been involved in, stage or film.
Right.
It was far and away the happiest, most comfortable show that I have been involved with for 6-8 years. And I was really pleased to find out that honestly, anhedonia is not an absolutely requirement for me. After a week or two of looking over my shoulder and wondering what I was fucking up or who was mad at me, I realized that, no, you're not fucking anything up and nobody is mad at you. And had a really good time. So
I'm glad to hear it.
Yes, it is actually an option. It's not normal, but it's still possible.
Yeah.
So yes, in the general that the actor has to suffer, doesn't have to, but it helps a lot, or at least it helps a lot for me.
For sure. And I guess there is a level of selflessness as an actor you have to give in order for the audience to appreciate and take joy from it, because there is an incredible amount of joy in the whole film. My immediate reaction at the end was a tragic heart, yes, but also like pure bliss to have spent so much time with this fantastic assortment of characters.
It would be intolerable if it wouldn't, it weren't. It would be absolutely intolerable.
Yeah.
If my tone was the dominant tone of the movie rather than kind of a central, I don't know, let's use the Pearl metaphor. If the tone of me as a person and a presence in that movie was more than the piece of dirt around which the pearl forms, it would be unbearable. It would be unbearable. Another really smart early critical response was that, I again don't remember who, but I've read every fucking review. A really smart early response by one of the critics in those weeks was that the Rosses have very smartly edited it as a series of bangers, one-liners, boom, 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 set them up, knock them down, set up some new ones, knock them down. The core of sadness flows through it, but they don't emphasize that in their choices of what to put in what to focus the audience's attention on.
Yeah, for sure.
It does feel for most of its running time like a party.
Yeah.
And that again is a very whether it's supposedly set in Vegas or not.
Yeah.
That is a very New Orleans thing to achieve.
Right.
As the partying in the face of unhappiness or doom is the default New Orleans temperament.
Sure.
So yeah.
Well, I mean, the beauty of any party is that you meet some people that you don't really want to continue any conversation with. You meet some who are kind of fascinating, and you're like, I wish I could spend more time with them. So I'm really glad that I got to spend an additional hour with you, Michael. I feel like I met you at the bar, and then I got to have another hour with you afterwards to actually talk about this stuff. Has been fantastic. Michael, what's next for you? Do you want to focus on film, or you spoke about being on stage? Is theater the love?
I consider myself a stage actor. I do, and I have about triple the credits on stage than I do on film.
Right.
And they're more substantial roles overall.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing on my film resume that approaches Bloody Nose, Empty Pockets. It stands out and alone on a fairly short, not embarrassingly short, but fairly short list. I didn't start film acting until I moved here.
Oh, really? Since you moved to New
No,
Orleans?
I didn't do it. New Orleans, again, post-Katrina for a couple of years, and again, everything has been thrown up in the air. But for a couple of years, because of tax credits, New Orleans was one of the go-to cities for Hollywood to shoot on the cheap.
Right.
Because, the city leaders, state leaders handed them our financial asses and said, here, please come here and take advantage of the local population, because that's what our city and state leaders do. And Hollywood said, sure, we'll take you up on that.
Yeah.
So there were 4 or 5 or 6 years where, it was starting to be referred to as Hollywood South. I started getting a couple of professional credits, still many more independent credits and student credits. But I did start getting some pro credits as well, and I'm not answering your questions. Your question was, I see myself as a stage actor, but I'm 62, I look 72, and I'm tired of cleaning bars and houses. Yeah. And if I can get more film work, I'm going to get it because I'm old.
I foresee, I'm not prophetic at all, but I foresee a very bright future if Bloody Nose Empty Pockets is anything to go by, man. It's one of those performances, and you may not like to hear it. I know some people don't like to hear specific comments on their performances, but it's one of those performances that is unforgettable. I saw that film 3 weeks ago now, and at the time I loved it, and as time has gone on, the film I've enjoyed, but your performance is what has lived on in the memory. It really, really stays with you. It's one of the most incredible performances I have seen all year, and I would love to be able to see you in something again in the future. If there are any directors hiring.
I don't mind hearing that at all.
As I was saying it, I thought maybe he won't mind this, actually.
There's no oh gosh about that at all. To use another overused expression, I left it all on the table. I may have been unhappy doing so, but I left it all on the table. And,
I mean, I am sorry that is the case. You don't hear that often. Obviously, when you watch the film, you don't get the insight into behind. And I'm sorry that was the case. But if it's any consolation at all, the final result was.
If that's what, if there's a poetry, there is the poetry, or at least a symmetry, to my needing to be that unhappy in a project to deliver that good a performance.
Yeah.
In the broad, I mean, in the reality of it at the time, I went home and considered quitting. I honestly did. Oh, wow. I went home and then, all right, I'm done. This is freak show stuff. I'm done.
Yeah.
But in the passage of time and the symmetry of who I am as a person, if I had to be unhappy in the production in order to deliver that performance, it's probably a fair trade. And I don't at all mind hearing that it's unforgettable. That's just completely fine with me.
Well, I mean, reckoning the two is a hard thing to do, but I mean, hearing you talk about it, it has heightened and really leveled up the entire experience for me. Hopefully everyone who sees the film will find their way to this interview afterwards. I think it's a fucking fantastic accompaniment to hear you talk.
I appreciate you. I appreciate you giving me so much room to wander.
Not at all. I have absolutely loved it. Michael, hopefully, because I don't know what the release structure is over here in the UK now, if it's going to get a cinema release or if it's going to go straight to video on demand, but hopefully it's going to have a new life for home entertainment over here, because it's the kind of thing that will get laughed.
That's amazing, because I you know what, I'm only just repeating myself. I'm only learning the film world. I'm only learning the film world beyond the particulars of how to be on set, how to behave, and you know, hit your marks and do what you're told. I had no idea of I had no idea of the breadth and reach of the London Film Festival. Like I said, it totally reinvigorated interest in the film. And I'm honored that it was a hit there. I'm following all kinds of people on Twitter that I didn't used to follow. And I'll just learn more about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Michael. This has been really, really appreciated.
You have a great day, and we'll go have a hurricane.
Absolutely. Batten down the hatches, man. Let me know that you're okay once it passes. I'm sure you will be.
And I want to say hello to my baby. Eric, I love you. Thank you.
Awesome.
Eric, I love you. Thank you for keeping me from being the man who appears in Bloody Nose, Empty Pockets. There. Be sure to include that.
Absolutely. I will include that, Michael. Michael, thanks so much, man. Look after yourself. Yeah. Thanks for giving us this time.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Talk to you soon.
Take care. Bye-bye.